Hey everybody, Andrew Zimmern, teacher, restaurateur, author, TV guy, traveler, and humble servant in the kitchen to you. We're going to be making one of my all-time favorite recipes. I call it Grandma Zimmern's Tailgating Pot of Love. But this is a recipe that I do in 3-gallon pots and bring out to the tailgate. And I'm gonna make a slightly smaller batch for you today. First thing I'm gonna do is take some caraway seeds, and this is actually a really crucial step in here. I have a hot soup pot on, and I'm just sprinkling these in to get a nice consistent layer. I've preheated this pot, and I can get that aromatic caraway flavor right away. But just stir this around. You don't want to burn it or scorch it too much. You just want to gently toast it so that those essential oils that are in the caraway seed come out. And we're gonna grind it once these get a little toasty. And I feel it, they're warm now, but they're not too hot to touch. The minute they become hot, we'll actually see a little bit of browning on them. All right, now I can really smell them. And when I touch it, it's not uncomfortably hot, but it's hot. So I'm getting close. All right. Here's our grinder. And all I'm going to do is sprinkle those in there. That is beautiful. Toasted ground caraway. Set that over there for when we need it. Next step in our process is going to be browning our sausages. Now, I love to put a variety of sausages in there. This is a smoked Ukrainian sausage. It's got a lot of garlic in there. This is my Kielbasa from Poland. And I'm cutting these in 4-inch lengths, just so it's easy to cook them. And then this is my absolute favorite sausage in the whole world. It is an artisanal Krakowska. It's a Polish sausage that's smoked, but you can actually see big pieces of smoked pork and ham in there. It has a casing on it. We want to remove that prior to browning this sausage, and these are going to be the wonderful smoky, fatty, sausagey flavors that wind up in our pea soup. Now, the nice thing about this sausage, like many others, if I can just peel this properly, the Krakowska rarely makes it into the soup pot in my house because it's so meaty and it's so delicious, I just eat it all the time. Some butter. And I'm being generous with the butter because ultimately we're also going to saute our vegetables in this same pot. And I just roll these and I cook these until the sausage is brown. We just want to get some nice color on the sausage, and it'll leave behind a nice fond in the pan that we can use. Crank up the heat, and we'll just let those brown for a little while. You can see right there the kind of browning that we're looking for that will eventually surround all of our sausage pieces. They're round, they're irregularly shaped. Don't get into analysis paralysis if you have a little bit of sausage that isn't browned. We're just looking to get some toasted, roasted, porky garlic flavor into the base of this soup. So I just keep rolling them. While that's cooking, let's start to assemble our vegetables. I save all of my vegetable trim for vegetable stock. I will save these for another use. I like the heart of the celery. And I'm just gonna slice this in thin but recognizable pieces. Celery is an extremely strong flavor. It's very mild, but it's extremely strong. But I love it, and I love it with pea soup. Put that over there. Let's get some of our escarole. Again, this has been washed. And I'm gonna remove some of those outer leaves. Usually what I'll do with these is I'll save them in the refrigerator and I'll add them, I'll saute them and add them to an omelet. Purposes and uses for everything in the kitchen, but here's the heart of our escarole. Take the end off. Same thing. Just nice little ribbons that are going to fall apart in this soup and lend their brilliant and subtle bittersweet flavor to it. Always check back on your sausage and keep rolling those around. You could see we're starting to get nice, crispy brown sear marks. We're starting to get a fond, those crusty little brown bits on the bottom of the pan from the pork fat. Put this to the side. All this is going to go into our pot when the sausage is done. Let's see what else we want to put in here. Fennel, crucial. Take off the tops. Save those. I'm going to save those to garnish the soup. Or look at your fennel. I usually will take away the outermost leaf from the fennel bulb. And the reason that I do that is that I build up vegetables for vegetable stock at home, but I also find that that one ends up being tough and sometimes a little bitter. Safely take off the tip of that, and then you can slice your fennel bulb. Pieces from the center will resemble celery, like this one, but pieces from the outer rings will resemble ribs of onion. I love fennel, and obviously it marries up beautifully with that same anise flavor that we have in the caraway seed. I just want a little more fennel to play with in this soup. I'm going to want an onion in here as well. And keep an eye on our sausage. Oh, that is just moving along beautifully. We'll raise the temperature on that a little bit. And the reason that I turned it up was that I had it down too low, but better to be safe than sorry, right? And you can see here, I mean, that's perfect. It's not blackening, it's just browning beautifully. I'm getting some nice crisp texture on the natural skins. These are almost done. First thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off the root end and then the flower end of my onion. Every chef cuts onions a different way. Because I'm cooking at home a lot, I like to take off both halves. I don't want tiny, tiny, tiny little pieces in this soup. I'm gonna get enough of that with the peas, but the peas are gonna fall apart. So I wanna make some nice recognizable pieces of onion that are small enough to cook down, but aren't too small so that they disappear into the soup. They're actually going to give me some texture because cooked peas don't take that long, vis-a-vis like beans. I mean, they take an hour, not 3 hours. So I want to make sure, wash my carrots. My peas cook the longest, but they're gonna have a little bit of a mushy component to them. So I wanna make sure that from a cutting standpoint, I make sure that all of my vegetables are in sizes that don't end up being mushy after an hour of cooking in the pot. So I want to make sure I still have texture on my vegetables. These sausages are just almost a minute away. This is an all-natural organic carrot that I have scrubbed clean. Over the last couple years with really good carrots, I don't peel them. I actually like the texture of the skin. Obviously, for certain salads and other presentations, I will in fact do that. And with the carrots, I mean, what shape do I want? Well, everything else seems to have its own sort of way of presenting in the pot. And I want to make sure that visually I have some different cuts in there because how food looks is important to me. So let's do half moons on the carrots. You can do whatever you're comfortable with. If you want to dice, that's fine. But half moons, about 1/8 of an inch thick, seem appropriate to me. This has turned out absolutely perfectly from a timing standpoint. Our sausages are browned and have given off a lot of fat in there. I'm just gonna lay these on this plate to cool a little bit. My onion and fennel goes in first. Again, please, you're making soup. You're not making a rocket ship, right? So if there's a little bit of other veg that gets in there, it's no big deal. I just like my onions and fennel to caramelize a little bit before I put in my celery, carrot, and my leaf vegetable. They have a lot more water content. And remember, you cannot brown in the presence of moisture. So I'm not looking to brown these. I'm just gonna sweat these veg. But I would like to get a little color on my onions before I move on with the rest of the soup. Sprinkle them with a little bit of salt. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, I always season at almost every stage of my cooking. Second thing, the salt draws the water out of the onions and the fennel. The water hits the pan, it caramelizes. The water is out of the onion and fennel. As you stir them, they pick up that coloring from the bottom of the pan, helps them give off that water. Just accelerates my cooking process. This will take about 3 or 4 minutes. Then we'll add our next bunch of ingredients. Right now, I have some really nice browning going on the edges there. All the sugars have come out. They're translucent, they've fully sweated. All right, so I want to add my seasonings. So, a shallow teaspoon of the caraway, because it's very strong. Another round of salt. I want to add my thyme. Now, over the course of an hour, all of these leaves, or most of them, are going to fall off. And I don't want stems in my soup. So I'm just going to make a little bouquet garni. And I'm going to make sure there's a knot there. And I don't like pieces of excess string in my food that I don't have to. So I just plop that right into the middle because the toasted flavor of the fresh thyme is going to be really nice in there. And then I'm going to add my carrots. I'm going to add my celery. We give those a nice stir. And heat those up and just start sweating them. And the reason that I'm going to pause for 60, 90 seconds now is to let the thermal momentum of the pot sort of come back. Every time you add cold ingredients to a pot, you're going to lower the temperature of what's in the pot. This leafy stuff isn't going to really do that, but 1.5 to 2 cups of carrot and celery? It sure is. But I can hear that sizzle again, and I can start to see the celery begin to become translucent. By the way, I can still smell the scorched fat from the sausage, which mixed with that caraway, it starts to get you a little excited. All right. Let's add our ham hock. This is actually half a ham hock, but I'm making a small batch of soup. I don't want to crowd my pot. This is an all-natural smoked product. We'll add in our escarole. Peas. I like to use yellow and green. Just give that a little stir. And then I'm going to add my chicken stock. Now here's the deal. In my recipe, I ask that you put this in your refrigerator and let it cool, because we're gonna slice it and heat it up later on. And the reason that I do that, that I ask of that, is that I don't know how long your sausages were at room temperature before they made it into your fridge on the way home from the store. Even though this is cured meat, all food can grow bacteria on it, depending on the environment. Maybe it was wrapped in saran wrap and you pulled it out of a case at the supermarket. So I always recommend refrigerating it. Now I happen to have picked up this sausage at my sausage shop right before coming over here, so I know it was cold the whole time. We're also in winter in Minnesota. It's 5 degrees out. So I know that it didn't get warm in my car. So I'm just gonna leave this out because this is only gonna cook for an hour and it's gonna go into a boiling environment. But at home, it's always a good idea, refrigerate your sausage after you browned it. This is starting to come to a simmer. Remember, bring it to a boil, lower the heat to maintain a simmer, and then put a lid on it, cook it for an hour. If we want to lose more liquid later on, I'll raise the temperature, take the lid off. But for right now, basic soup 101, bring it to a boil, lower the temperature, put the lid on. So, our pot of love has been simmering. Now I should tell you, sometimes if I don't have sausage, I'll just chop up this ham hock, but most of the time, I just remove it and use it for garnish, or I'll just eat it myself as a little snack, because it's just absolutely perfect. And you can see here when I bring the ladle up, the peas, some are broken down, some are whole. I don't have to do anything to this soup other than season, gently stir, and then most importantly, slice our sausage for this. So again, I'm just gonna do thin rings because I just wanna heat this through. So there's our Ukrainian and our, a little more of that. Get our kielbasa in there. I just want pieces that sit on the spoon the right way. This is that wonderful Krakowska. And I'm just gonna stack these and cut them into quarters so they sit on the bowl, so that they sit on the spoon the right way. Just like to think about how we're eating this dish. Let's do a couple more pieces. And then this just goes right in the soup. Now we're adding 2-3 cups of cold sausage to this. So you need to let it go about 3 or 4 minutes. For it to heat through. And the effect that I'm looking for is not only the sausages getting hot, but I want the fat from those sausages to go into the soup. That salty, porky fat. Now you can see after 70, 80 minutes, the bones fall out of this smoked shank. And because I love you, I am going to cut some of this up. And it's just, wow, this is just going to fall apart. So I'll just cut that a different way. So here we have all that wonderful pork hock in there. It's smoked and cured, so I guess technically it's a ham hock. All right. Let that sit for a minute and it's ready to serve. All right, so after 4 or 5 minutes, the pork is heated through. Just give that a couple knocks. This is that bouquet garni of thyme. The thyme leaves have fallen off. You can actually see them there on the top of that scoopful. And the stems are all held together by the string. That goes bye-bye. All of its flavor, it's done its job. All its flavor is in that delicious soup. Most important thing, let's taste and season. A little bit of salt. If you have fancy vinegar and you want to do it, that's great. Use a sweeter one. Sherry vinegar works very well with it. Don't use a really, really high acidic red wine vinegar. With this, white distilled works nicely. I have done, just a teaspoon or two. All you're doing is providing a little bit of counterpoint to the richness of the peas. And some people like a little hot sauce in theirs. I've been known to put 8, 9, 10, 12 drops. It does give a little bit of piquancy to it. I will usually put it on the table for folks that like it that way. In the tailgating scenario, lots and lots and lots of hot sauce is usually nice crusty bread. There you have it. We'll put a few pieces of bread next to that. And you remember the fennel fronds that we saved? Just a little bit of that in the middle, just to fancy it up a little bit. Maybe a little white peppercorn, not black for this. Just a little bit on top so you get that aromatic when you taste it and you get the flavor as you begin to stir it in. And make sure everybody gets a nice soup spoon. Perfect for your tailgate or really any time. Who's kidding you?